Hey, this is Dynasty Coach A, and you're listening to the Dynasty Hotseat.
Yes, hello everybody, and welcome back into the Dynasty Hot Seat, the only Dynasty show out there that is a certified inferno. And today we got a brand new guest on. We got John. You can follow him over on X at Dynasty Coach A. He's a very busy guy. He's the host of Devi Devotional. He's the host of the Full Tilt Devi podcast. He is a writer over at DLF, and of course, close personal friend to the man himself, Dave Wright. John, absolutely great to have you on the show. How you doing, mate?
Great. I'm not used to Sunday morning recording. I don't know if we're supposed to talk about when we're recording, but I'm over in the States, and it's an early morning, so I usually have like a little glass of whiskey when I'm recording or something to that effect. And I thought about making my coffee Irish this morning, but I stopped myself from it. So here we are, just me with some coffee. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, well, of course, I am Irish myself, so I wouldn't be offended if you decide to have a little Irish coffee just to celebrate the whole thing. So that'll be absolutely great. So just on the coffee today, that's fine. I'm just caffeinated up as well. So we're going to have a great show, and we're going to chat some 2024 rookies. But before we get into that, if you're new here, hey, thank you so much for joining. If you've not already, hitting that like and that subscribe button, hey, it's free and it always goes a long way. So that'll be absolutely. But if you're a return viewer and you've not done it already, what the hell are you doing? Come on, let's get involved here, right? Let's go. So, John, before we dive into the full 2024 mock draft, do you have any sort of overarching views of this class? Is there any kind of trends that you're noticing, especially now that we're, post combine? Anything coming to light a little bit more about this class for you?
Well, my take, once again, I have two Devi podcasts. Obviously, I talk about these players for years and years and years. And my take for a long time now has always been that there's a lot of overrated players. And I actually liked this class because there's so many overrated players that I feel like we're going to get steals in the second and third rounds of drafts, and even like late first round and all that. And nothing's really changed, in my opinion, because a lot of people that I don't necessarily love ran really fast times or did amazing at the combine, and then you had a couple players that that I love that kind of didn't have the greatest day at the combine, and and people are just going to completely write those players off their board. So I still kind of feel that way, to where I feel like you're just going to get steals if you play the game right. If you're just like, oh, this guy ran a 4.38 and this guy got drafted and at 15th overall, and that's all you care about, then you're probably going to get a couple duds here and there. But if you truly focus on who the best players are and that kind of thing, I feel like you can really make out in this draft.
Yeah, sort of a little microcosm of that. I don't know if you'll agree with, but I'm seeing players like Isaac Garendo sort of fly up boards, whereas if you were watching in college, certainly from me watching, I was more impressed with Jawar Jordan, his teammate, but because he didn't have such a great combine, he's flying down the board. So is that the kind of thing that you notice more being a Devi player?
Yeah, it's that kind of stuff. It's just I always I'm willing to make slight adjustments because of combine times, things like that.
Yeah.
But I really focus on the college production. Were you able to do it in college? Now, every once in a while, you have your outliers that just were injured or whatever. Their offense was that bad, and so they weren't ever able to truly put it together in college. But they go out and they crush the combine, or they don't even, and then they're pretty good. Like a la Puka Nacua last year, but we're never looking for Puka Nacua. It's an outlier, So
Yeah.
I'm not searching this year trying to find out who the next Puka Nacua is. I'm saying that's not the norm. That's not something that I'm looking for. But like you said, if somebody wasn't even on your draft board, and now you're gonna talk about them being like your top 12 of a player position, then that's probably a bad thing. Now, that's not saying that he shouldn't be on your radar at all, but jumping up that much is probably a mistake.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, John. I think a lot of people tend to overreact to the combine, so it's fun to watch. It's nice to see these players. You can get some takes from them, but I'm right there with you. I'm sort of tweaking things. I'm not making any big moves here or there. So that is great insight there, and we're going to see if you can put all that knowledge and insight together, John, because we're going to pull up our draft board here. And John, it's the absolute ideal position because you have every single pick. You got 1 to 12. We're going to go. We'll blast through one round. We might even be able to sneak in a second round as well. So, John, this is a super flex. It is not a tight end premium. Where are you going with the first overall pick? And do you have sort of tiers here at the top of the draft as well?
Yeah, honestly, the more I've thought about it, I really have a tier of 5 players that I'm really happy with at the
Yeah.
beginning. I know a lot of people tend to have more of like a tier of 2 in the beginning. And I really don't have that much of a differentiation between 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And so, like, obviously, like, you always want to get as much value as you can. If you're trading back, you're doing whatever. But I mean, in this world where I'm having to pick all of them, I really don't care. I mean, it sounds
Yeah.
stupid because you probably should, but I mean, I think it just shows itself how top heavy the class is, and that there's just such quality players. And you've heard people saying, "Oh, well, I have Malik Neighbors over MHJ," and then you have other people that are saying, "Oh, I have Jaden Daniels over Caleb Williams," and so on and so forth. And like, there's a reason for that because they all have high end prospects. They're all high end
Yeah.
prospects, and so I really do have a tier 5. I'm happy with any of these players, but I've been pretty on board saying Marvin Harrison Jr. was my 101 for the longest time now.
Yeah.
I I think that he's a can't miss prospect. And I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be the best wide receiver of all time or anything like that.
Yeah.
But, especially with these early first round picks, they're all high end prospects. Like, they all have the capability of being amazing. But I'm looking for a little more safety in that high end prospect. And so, like, a Caleb Williams doesn't quite have the safety, even though people kind of want to act like he does. I mean, he has some question marks to his game. Now, he also has some amazing qualities and traits, which is the reason why he's also up here in this realm. But yeah, if I'm on the clock, I'm drafting MHJ as my 101.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. You're right. I love the way you called him like a can't miss prospect. And I think this is maybe the 17th show I've done now where I've asked every guest, John, and so far everyone's had the same answer. Are there any holes in his game at all? Like, is there anything?
I mean, he's not, his game isn't speed. So,
Yeah.
like, if that's what you're looking for, it's just, that's not it, but he doesn't need it. That's the thing. Like, he's really, just a high end X wide receiver. Like, think of like old school players, like your AJ Greens and your Julio Jones, like back in the heyday. It's closer to that than what we have now with your Tyreek Hills and your DJ Moores and players like that. So it's just, they're all different, and so there's no right or wrong or good or bad or best. Well, there is bad, but I mean, there's no like best or worse or whatever. But there's just there's different types or different ways of playing the game, and so speed is not his thing. I wouldn't really call it a bad thing. I wouldn't call it like a knock on him. But if that's what you're looking for, is him to go like burn safety or something like that, or burn a corner, he's not going to do it.
Do you see this potentially being a trend from this year that we've seen Caleb Williams not really do anything at the combine? We've seen Marvin Harrison not really do anything. Like a lot of these guys at the top of this draft that we're going to mention, they've not done at all, and they're like, "There's tape on me. Go watch the tape. I'm not running about in underwear, potentially getting injured." Do you think this is going to be a trend going forward if their draft stock is not hurt at all?
Well, unfortunately, I think it's going to be different for each class and each person, because it's all about what they're hearing from their from teams, from their agents and everything. I don't know why I blanked on that word, but I think it's just really what they're hearing. And Caleb Williams is basically guaranteed to be the 101 in the NFL draft. So what does he have to gain? The only thing he can go out there do is get hurt, like you said, and that that's going to hurt, or maybe just have a bad day, an off day, or something like that. It doesn't really make any sense. like the only one that I really feel like maybe should have done it is Drake May, because it seems like
Yeah.
we're getting a little bit of fatigue from him. Like everyone just, Caleb Williams is the 101 in the NFL draft, so of course he's always going to be up high. And then Jaden Daniels is the sexy, speed guy that's like similar to Lamar Jackson, that kind of thing. And so like we're going to get really excited about him. And then Drake May is just the other guy, and so I kind of feel like maybe he should have done it. And
Yeah.
so if we see a player falter or get drafted lower than he should have, then maybe they'll revert back to doing it, and going and actually
Yeah.
doing the combine drills. But I definitely think there could be a trend where we see these top guys do it, and we're seeing it more and more often, unfortunately, because I'm a stats nerd. So, like I'm putting all these numbers and, combine metrics and everything into my models, and I can't do it when they don't do it. So I have to
Yeah.
stick with projected stuff, and I hate that.
Yeah. It's always interesting to see these guys going out and running these drills and seeing just how fast. Like, would have loved to have seen Jaden Daniels like run the 40, things like that, but we're just not going to be able to see it, unfortunately. But I think it's just because we're degenerates, John. Right? We just are missing football already, and we just need that extra itch, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. So we got Marvin Harrison locked in at 1. Who's following him up then at pick number 2?
I think just because of the guarantee of, I mean, I guess there's no guarantee of anything, but like Caleb Williams should be the 101 in the NFL draft. He's
Yeah.
going to have DJ Moore. There's talks of them drafting like a Roma Dunze or somebody at 109, their ninth overall pick. I mean, that wide receiver core would be absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Obviously they need to work on their offensive line and things like that, but with the prospects of who Caleb Williams is, the high end stuff, I'm willing to take him here. And like I said, I mean, I really have a tier of 5, so I'm really nitpicking right now. And honestly, within a tier, I'm willing to adjust for situation and landing spot and things like that. So when it's all said and done, I might flip somebody over him. But as of right now, when he's really maybe the only landing spot we can kind of confirm, then it's a little easier for me to say at 102, I'm willing to go ahead and take him here.
One of the things I think is a very underused tactic in Dynasty Fantasy Football is we're sort of 90% sure that Caleb Williams is going to go to Chicago. And if you're a believer in Caleb Williams, I don't see a lot of guys out there going now and buying DJ Moore now, buying Cole Kmet now before Caleb Williams takes a snap, because as soon as he starts throwing to them, their price is going to go up. So I'm a big proponent of getting ahead of that and going out and getting these guys now while their price is slightly cheaper. Is that something that you try to do as well?
Yeah, and it's really tough right now because I don't know if it's just the looming free agency or what, but it just seems really difficult to get trades done. I'm
Yeah.
kind of having to like intentionally lose trades to get anything done right now. Yesterday, this is not a sexy trade by any means, but it's something that I wanted to get done. But yesterday I traded away Geno Smith and I got back Jaden Reed and Mac Jones. Once again,
Okay.
not a sexy trade at all. But I'm hearing rumors that Mac Jones is getting looked at to be to go to Denver, and so if he goes and it ends up being the starter in Denver, then that's going to be an absolute win. And regardless, even if he doesn't, if he never sees the field again, I still love Jaden Reed, and so I really don't hate the trade. And so I'm doing stuff like that. That's probably like a loss on paper, but I really don't care. But just 1-for-1 deals, going out and trying to get DJ Moore, that seems really difficult right now. But maybe after free agency, once we see a little bit more movement, there's a little more clarity for stuff, then maybe we can actually like make some deals. 'Cause I don't know if you've seen the same thing in your leagues.
Yeah, I see a lot of that. I see, like, in some leagues, people just like, especially like home leagues, you're playing like with your friends from home. People are just like, "See ya," like I'm away at the beach. Like, you won't see me for a while, which is quite frustrating. In other leagues, you'll get messages back being like, "Hey, I'm just waiting to see what happens after the combine and the draft, and I'm not moving anything." So that's fairly common. And if Mac Jones goes to Denver, I'm going to throw up my mouth if the words Drew Brees comes up in the same sentence with him. Like, I can tell you right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, but at the same time, if he's being at least discussed in that realm, then I want to be proactive about it and try and get him for
Yeah.
free or as
Yeah.
close to free as possible. And I mean, there's things like, I kind of did the same thing with Baker Mayfield last year, 2 years ago, and look how that's turned out. And it doesn't always work out. I've also done the same thing. Well, it kind of worked out. I did the same thing with Teddy Bridgewater like years ago when he ended up
Oh
being the starter
yeah,
for the Broncos. And so I got a quality like season out of him where I was able to use him, but then he really didn't do much after that, and I'm pretty sure he's retiring now. So it doesn't always work out, but you get these guys for cheap or for free, and it doesn't really matter if it does or not.
yeah, exactly. Tell that to my Zach Wilson shares, right? Just sitting there, just doing absolutely nothing. Maybe there's still time. Who knows where he's going to end up? So we got Caleb Williams locked in at 2. You got this tier of 5, so we kind of know the players that you're going to pick. But who would you take at 3 then?
I'm gonna go ahead and go with Drake May. Like I said, I think
Yep.
there's a fatigue with May, but I really feel like when it's all said and done, he statistically speaking, he's the best quarterback in this class.
Yep.
If you're just looking at the college production, he's actually run more than Caleb Williams. Now he hasn't run nearly as much as Jaden Daniels, but he's thrown a lot more than Jaden
Yep.
Daniels has, and he's been a lot more consistent with his throws and everything over the course of the years. Jaden Daniels had an amazing 2023, but he wasn't amazing before that. He was good. He was quality. He was maybe even average in some of his years. Something really clicked in that last year between him and then Malik Neighbors. But Drake May kind of gets forgotten about. And remember, like he really only had Josh Downs in 2022, 2021, 2022. And then this past year, his number one wide receiver, who's not even really being drafted that highly in mocks
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff, didn't even play half the season because he wasn't allowed to. He wasn't NCAA eligible, which it was so
weird.
stupid. But he came back, and you saw the entire offense get that much better because they didn't have much. I mean, their offense was just not that great. So of course his 2023 looks a little worse. People go, "Oh no, he's falling apart. He's not quite that guy." And it's like, well, there was reasons for it.
Yeah.
So once again, a big tier. We're going to look at landing spots. We're going to look at what else is going on. But I mean, I truly believe that Drake May should be in the same conversation as Caleb Williams. Obviously, Caleb Williams is the sexier name, and so that's why I went ahead and took him at 102 because I'm probably easier. I have an easier ability to trade him and do things like that. If I'm wanting to do that after I draft
Yeah.
him or whatever. But I'm just as happy having Drake May on my team.
You sort of read my mind a little bit there, John, because my follow-up question to you was going to be, out of the 2, Williams and May, obviously Jaden Daniels by a country mile had the best receiving core. But out of Caleb and Drake May, who do you think had the easier task with who they were throwing it to? Because neither of them had great options, really, right?
Yeah, I mean, Caleb played hardly anyone. I mean, the USC is in the Pac-12. They were.
Yeah.
They're no longer in the Pac-12. But last year when they were playing, they were in the Pac-12. I mean, they're playing literal like the 134th ranked team and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then when they did go play these better teams, Caleb kind of struggled. And I mean, it wasn't just his fault. It was the offensive line. The offense was terrible. Like I have no idea how Cliff Kingsbury has a job in the NFL. Like it blows my mind because I've had, once again, I'm a stat nerd. I don't
Yeah.
do the film grinding. I don't do all that, but I've had film grinders tell me they're watching it and it's not a real offense. And I just watched a little bit of Caleb Williams and I could tell you that, so it's like, it wasn't a real offense. It's like, wait, and throw it 50 yards. Okay. Now, and then do it all over again. That's not an offense. And so that's the slight concern with Caleb Williams is not that he doesn't have all the tools, but he might have to learn how to be an actual NFL quarterback. And so that is a little concerning. But comparing the two, I mean, neither one really had like huge challenges, but I would say that UNC had a worse time of it because once again he didn't have his top wide receiver the entire time.
Yeah.
They do play some better end talents in teams, like Clemson and teams like that, whereas USC really only had to play, I think it was Oregon and maybe Washington. I don't remember if they played both or not, but regardless, they both kind of had pretty easy schedules. But I think that Caleb Williams really showed like his tale of two seasons when he had to play the more difficult teams versus playing like Las Vegas.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Cliff Kingsbury as well. I mean, this guy did so badly at Texas Tech. Mahomes wasn't even the first pick of the draft. Like, this is like, yeah, now he gets Caleb Williams. And yeah, now he has got a job back in there. Did he go to Washington, John?
Washington, I believe, yeah.
Yeah, I mean
I don't get it.
that's
I don't understand. I mean, he failed. He already failed in the NFL.
yeah,
People were like, "Get the hell out of here! Go to the, they were talking about like going to the UFL, USFL, whatever it's called now,
yeah,
and then he goes back to college. Obviously they did great things, but it was because they don't really hardly play anyone. It wasn't like their offense was this amazing
yeah,
juggernaut. And also Caleb Williams is really good, and they had really plenty of other good players, Marshawn Lloyd,
yeah,
Zachariah Branch, Taj Washington, Brendan Rice, like all these players, and some younger players, and Deuce Robinson, Mekhi Lemon.
yeah.
They had like studs all throughout, even if they're not all proven players yet, because some of them were true freshmen. And yet, like it was just like I said, it was not a real NFL offense at the very least. It was something, but I don't know what exactly it was.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. And Zachariah Branch, can't wait to talk about him in a few years because that guy, yeah, he's an exciting young talent for sure. So we got 1, 2, 3 off the board. Who's coming off at pick number 4 for you, John?
I'm gonna go ahead and take Malik Neighbors here. I honestly once again, I really don't even argue with the people, or won't argue with people that have Neighbors over MHJ. And it's just because he had such an amazing 2023. Now, Jaden Daniels also had such an amazing 2023, but he was a fifth year player, and
Yeah,
so I'm gonna go with the proven junior, third year player that put it
yeah,
all together, kind of the way. It sounds stupid because not everyone does things exactly the same way, but Malik Neighbors put everything together the way that we want them to. He did it in year 1, did it in year
yeah,
2, got a little bit better, and then in year 3 blew up. That's how you kind of want to see a wide receiver in college produce and get better. And he did that. And not only did he get better, but I mean, he showed that he is a number 1 wide receiver. He is
yeah.
the guy and all that. He has, otherworldly speed, where we were saying MHJ doesn't quite have the speed
Hmm.
to break a defense or whatever. Neighbors does have that.
Yeah,
And they both have pros and cons. And so this isn't me saying that he's better, but he's better at certain things, and then obviously he's worse at others. But
yeah,
there's just, I mean, I once again, not the film grinder, but I've seen some of the highlights, and obviously I watched a lot of LSU. I'm in campus to Canton leagues, and so I had Jaden Daniels, I had Malik
yeah.
Neighbors. I'm watching these games and seeing how many points I'm scoring, and I'm like, holy crap! You just see him burn defenses. It's almost like not copying the players at all, but it's almost Tyreek Hill esque with the
Yeah,
speed. Where he's able to just run away from everyone.
yeah. He's like I always sometimes whenever I look at him, he he's not the same sort of physical size as this guy, but I can kind of see Debo Samuel sometimes the way he runs with the ball, like a little bit of that and that huge speed that he has. So I just love watching Malik Neighbors play. Do you have like a dream landing spot for Malik Neighbors?
I mean, obviously, if there's been rumblings of the Patriots possibly taking MHJ at 3,
Yeah,
and then if we could link Neighbors with Kyler at 4, I would absolutely love that.
yeah,
I think that would be amazing. And then they have the Cardinals have another pick later on in the round, and there's so many other wide receivers. I mean, they could almost fix that wide receiver
yeah.
core. And I'm like the biggest Kyler Murray guy. So like you fix that wide receiver core, have a Neighbors, have a like I'm trying to think of who else you could get. I was gonna say Brian Thomas Jr., but I don't know if you want. I mean, maybe they do want the two teammates on the same team. I don't know. It
Yeah.
might work out, but something like that. And then all of a sudden you have a fixed team. I would absolutely love that.
Yeah, I think all Cardinals fans around the world as well would love the sound of that too. That would be absolutely great. So Neighbors in at 4. Jade Daniels, he the 5th player in your tier you were talking about.
Yes, sir. And I mean, honestly, the only reason why I'm putting him here at the fifth, as much as I love him, and he does have that game breaking fantasy football, like breaking
Yeah.
style with the running and everything. He has that, but I mean, you have to have question marks about why it took him so long. It
Mhm.
really was only the one true amazing year. And of course, people are going to say Joe Burrow and all that, and that's fine. And I'm not trying to take anything away from Jaden Daniels, but I'm just saying why I have him, and I still have him in my tier. I'm
Yeah.
perfectly fine with any of these 5 players being at my 101, 102, whatever. So I'm once again not talking crap about Daniels, but the reason why I'm putting him at 5 is because there has to be some questions in the back of your mind, like what happened this year. Did it really truly click, or did something just work? Did it just, for whatever reason, something worked against the style of offense you were running? Malik Neighbors just being that damn good, things like that. Obviously, we saw Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. both have game-breaking speed. Were they able to just run past these college corners and just get open at will? And is that going to happen in the NFL? And if it doesn't happen, is that going to be a problem? And then obviously there's like slight size concerns that he's not the bulkiest guy. And so if he's running and he's taking some of the shots that he took in college, is he going to survive? And so that's why I have him here at 105. But I love Jaden Daniels to death.
What would you say the main difference is between the Jaden Daniels we've seen at Arizona State and the Jaden Daniels we've seen at LSU? What's the big difference you see there?
I mean, the biggest thing was he cleaned up his interceptions for me. I'm a big proponent. One of the reasons why I was kind of out, or I wouldn't say kind of, I was very out on Will Levis is because of his interception rate. Like you saw at Arizona, it was almost like a 2-1 Arizona State. At Arizona State, it was almost a 2-1 touchdown interception rate. And then now here at LSU, even last year where he didn't have quite the prolific year, he still calmed down with the interceptions, and we saw that, and that's when he started jumping up the model, and that's why I ended up drafting him in that C2C league. And people were like mocking me for it. They're like, "Why are you taking Jaden Daniels?" They were saying Garrett Nussmeier was going to take over at some point because Daniels wasn't a passer and this and that. And I'm like, have you seen what he did last year? And I mean, it wasn't like. It wasn't even me saying he's going to be the number one guy or anything like that. It was just saying like he's not bad at all. And then, of course, he puts up this amazing year, and then I look like a genius. So but yeah, that was really the biggest thing for me is you see that transition, and not every quarterback can do it. Spencer Rattler was never able to do it. People wanted him to be amazing, and he just couldn't get rid of the interceptions. And the only reason why his even came down a little bit is because he started dinking and dunking the ball. He started throwing it like 7 yards down the field. That's not what I'm looking for with my quarterback, is 7 intended air yards down the field at all. We see with Jaden Daniels, it's closer to like 12 or 13 or something crazy like that. So that's what I'm looking for. A guy that's pushing the ball down the field, being accurate with it, and not turning the ball over. And that's what we saw, that transition from Arizona State to LSU.
I had a weird thought just a few days ago. I seen a tweet go out, and it was something about Jaden Daniels will never make it in the NFL because he's not or never make it for fantasy because he's not an elite passer. And I sort of posed the devil's advocate question. And I said, is there actually a link between being an elite passer and fantasy success? Because I'm not sure there actually is.
I mean, it's like the whole Patrick Mahomes thing. Patrick Mahomes was not a huge prospect. I mean, there's a reason why he went at 10 in the NFL draft, and that was really because one team fell in love. One team said, "Hey, we have Alex Smith. We don't need Patrick Mahomes. We can draft Patrick Mahomes, put him behind Alex, and if it takes a couple years, whatever, we can see if we have something with this amazing arm." And that was what they were drafting for. It wasn't, we're drafting them to win the next 18 Super Bowls and all that kind of stuff. And, there's a complete hindsight bias with people. Like, they just forget about all that. And they're like, nope, Patrick Mahomes was the greatest prospect of all time. No, he wasn't. He was a quality prospect. He was not an amazing prospect. And so it's difficult when you're seeing these people tearing it up. And then, the other thing is people like to forget that there's different conferences in college football, and that those different conferences matter because the Pac-12 is not playing defense the way that the SEC is playing. And so you're comparing Bo Nix and what he did. People say, "Oh, he threw for 4,000 something yards and 50 touchdowns. Like, he's the same as Jaden Daniels." It's like, nope, he's not, because he was playing no one. And then you have Jaden Daniels going up against SEC competition doing the same thing. And that's why he's in my top tier, because he did have that prolific arm. So to answer your question, I haven't done enough studying on it to say yes or no, but I get what you're saying is just because you're able to throw it 70 yards, just because you're able to complete passes down the field, like a Caleb Williams, like a Jaden Daniels, whatever, does not guarantee your success in the NFL. You have to
Yeah.
put it all together, and that's why. I mean, I don't look at one metric. I don't look at, oh, did he complete 50 passes down the field. I don't look at that. I look at, I think I want to say 15 different metrics for
Mm.
college quarterbacks, and that's how I come to my conclusion of who they are. And all these guys, all three that I've named so far, stand out as the top tier of guys. So I mean, I would disagree with whoever said that Jaden Daniels can't make it because he's not a prolific passer. I mean, he wasn't always a prolific passer, but he definitely was the kind of in 2022, and then definitely in 2023.
Yeah. Yeah, he definitely came such a long way, and people kind of forget these are like kids still, right? They could get so much better still. We've seen that so many times. So expect Daniels to continue on that path of improvement, all things being well. So that brings you to the end of your first tier, John. Start of the second tier at 1/6. Do you have a couple people in this tier as well, or do they start to get a bit smaller now?
Yeah, I think I have a tier of three here,
Mhm.
and honestly, I know what I should take as far as like I know what the community wants me to take here.
Mhm.
Um, I don't want to do it, and I don't think. I'm not saying this to be like different or whatever controversial.
Yeah.
I'm saying that when I really feel like when my rookie drafts are come around and I'm on the clock at 106, I don't think I'm going to take Brock Bowers, even though I know people kind of want me to take Brock Bowers here.
Yeah.
But I really don't think I'm going to. And I've always been the biggest proponent of Xavier Worthy. I've loved his talent. I've loved his speed. I knew he was going to be fast. I knew he was going to tear up the combine. I did not know he was going to be 4.21 fast. I will admit that,
No.
but but I knew he was going to be fast. And I even put a post out on Twitter, a couple days before, just saying like, "Hey, here's my top 6 of my rankings. I just want to put it out there now, saying that Xavier Worthy is my wide receiver 3 in the class before the combine, because I don't want
Yeah.
people to be like, oh, you only did that because he ran a 4.21 and that kind of thing." And so he solidified himself in the NFL draft. I really don't think like he was being projected as closer to like a mid second round in the NFL draft, and
Yeah.
now I don't think he's going to make it past the mid first round. Like there's a very good chance he's going to go right around 18, 20. 18 is the Bengals. I should have actually written this down because I was talking with a friend and I was like, 18 is the Bengals, and I don't remember all the teams, but there was obviously the Chiefs and the Bills, and I mean, there's so many quality teams going through that end of the first round. I'm like, any of those teams, and we're going to be ecstatic about Xavier Worthy. And so while I do love Brock Bowers, and I worry, and I mean, I don't want to get into projected landing spots too much because obviously it's only projected; it's not guaranteed. But I'm seeing
Yeah.
a lot of Brock Bowers to Indianapolis. It's seemingly becoming more consensus. And I don't want to say I'll ever be all out on a player by going to a spot or anything like that, but I would definitely lower him to the bottom of my tier of this
Yeah.
tier if he ends up in Indianapolis, because there's a lot of mouths to feed there and a very unproven quarterback that I don't truly believe in, as far as like being someone who's going to elevate players and get them to their ceilings. Now he might get himself to a ceiling, but he's not going to bring
Yeah.
other players to their ceiling. And so that's why I'm going to go ahead and lean towards Worthy here, and I'm probably going to move Bowers down to my tier of 3, like I said.
Yeah, I think Worthy's just so much fun to watch. I don't really know. I think Texas maybe just had too many mouths to feed. Sort of the steal of as you just said. That's why we didn't really see his production, kind of the opposite of Malik Neighbors. It was kind of flipped on its head a little bit. Like he sort of had this amazing bust as his freshman, and then it sort of dwindled a little bit. And I know obviously Quentin Years got injured and everything, but that was maybe the only knock I would have on Worthy. But I don't think it was his fault necessarily. I think it was maybe just the way he was used at Texas, and he couldn't have done much more when he had the ball in his hands.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of questions because he has drops in college, and people obviously put that on him. I have a hypothesis that I've never truly dove into, but I really do have a hypothesis that drops are more of a quarterback stat than they are a wide receiver
Mm,
stat.
yeah,
And I keep saying I'm going to do that analysis at some point, and then I never actually do. So at this point, I'm just spewing nonsense. But I I've seen enough where like the drops go up for players when they have worse quarterbacks. And I'm not saying that Quinn Ewers is absolutely terrible or anything like that. He's better than other players that other wide receivers are going to. Like Zay Flowers, was at Boston College, and he had Phil Jurasek throwing it to him. Like, he's much worse than Quinn Ewers. So I'm not saying like it was the worst thing that's ever happened, but I don't want to attribute every drop to Xavier Worthy, and I'm not going to consider that an issue that I have to actually worry about in the NFL. I'm not saying he won't ever drop a ball. Every player does. It's not something I'm going to focus on.
Slightly off topic, but do we see Quinn Ewers definitely hold that job for all of next year? Or are people going to be so excited about Arch Manning that they're going to play him?
Well, it's tough because, Arch was a small school, high school guy, and he really had a big step he had to make to even become like college viable, much less NFL viable. And so it's difficult to say, is he ready? Now, I've heard great things from people that know a lot about what's going on in Texas. It seems like he is a lot closer to being ready now than he obviously was last year.
Yeah.
I'm, once again, I'm not saying Quinn Ewers is terrible, but I've always been the proponent that Quinn Ewers is not the player that other people thought he was. And now it seems like a lot of people are catching up to that. But my thing is, they play Michigan week 2. And I'm just like, if they lose that game, and now with the new system, losing one game isn't nearly as bad as it used to be, because it used to kind of be a death knell. Like, oh, well, our season's over, and now it might not be the end of the world because you can still make the playoffs and do whatever. But I'm wondering if they just go out and get dominated and Ewers looks terrible in that Michigan game, do they go, why don't we see what Arch can do? Because I want to say, if I remember correctly, they have an easy game like the next couple games after that. Maybe they go, hey, let's just see what Arch can do. I won't guarantee it because it's college football and these coaches really do seem to lean on the incumbent, like the guy with the experience. So I definitely will not guarantee it, but I wouldn't put it past anyone either.
Yeah, I'll be keeping a close eye on Texas next year. Going to be an exciting team to watch, even without a guy like Xavier Worthy or his teammate, who we might talk about later. We'll see. So we got Worthy locked in at 6. Then who's following him up in your tier of 3 at 6, 7, and 8?
All right, so this is where it's really tough because it's not a player that I have to take here. But I already said that I wanted to move Bowers to the end of the tier, so I'm going to do it. I'm going to stick to my word here. I'm going to take the next quarterback off the board. I'm going to take JJ McCarthy. And, a month ago, people would have said I was absolutely insane. And I mean, people did. Because, I mean, once again, multiple Debbie pods, I've had these takes for a while. This isn't like the first time I'm saying it. People said, you're absolutely insane. McCarthy's not in the same level as these other guys. And he's not. There's a reason why I have a tier of 5 and then a tier break. He's not on the same level. But in the past couple months, we've seen McCarthy creep up. 2 months ago, JJ McCarthy was considered a second rounder. Some people even said, oh, he might be a third rounder in the NFL draft. And then obviously because of that, in rookie drafts and rookie mocks and everything as well. Since then, he's creeping up. Now, Travis May just put out something. I don't know if I think he posted it, but if he didn't, in some of the group chats I'm in with them, he was posting about how, he's been scraping a lot of data from all these different websites, mock drafts and everything else. He's been putting it all together. And he feels like JJ McCarthy is basically locked in the NFL draft between pick 8 and pick 13. And I mean, once again, nothing's ever guaranteed. Anything can change, anything can happen. But I'm kind of feeling the same way. Even if he goes at 15, 20, wherever in the first round, I really don't care. Like a team is drafting him because they need him. Yeah. And the only thing about JJ is I don't think he's ready day one. I don't think he's going to step onto the field and just light it up day one. I'm not saying he can't. I wouldn't expect it. But at 107 here, I really don't mind it. Like, I don't care at 107. Like, I don't need this player per se to kill it day one. And I mean, we don't draft for need anyway. I mean, at least that's always been my big thing is I'm not drafting for need. I'm drafting the best players. And I do believe that JJ McCarthy has the tools to put it all together, a la, not comparing the players at all, but a la a Patrick Mahomes back in the day, which once again, Patrick Mahomes was not the best prospect, but he had the tools. And I feel like he can put it together, not to that extent, but he can put it together and be a quality quarterback. I wrote an article about JJ McCarthy. If you want to have hear more about it on at dlf.com or dynastyleaguefootball.com, and I talk about all my expectations and all that kind of stuff, and I feel like at the very least McCarthy can be a top half of the league quarterback, like 16th or better, when it's all said and done. And honestly, with what we've been dealing with the past couple of years with the injuries and people getting demoted and promoted and all that kind of stuff, a top 16 quarterback is pretty damn important.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen Joe Flacco come off the couch and become like a valuable asset. So JJ McCarthy, if he gets that draft capital, I think, especially in Superflex, like if he hits, you can get any of these guys coming up after him in a trade straight up for JJ McCarthy. You can probably get plus on top. So it's just that value of quarterback that is so important, especially like you said right now with the landscape that we have. So I love the pick of McCarthy, and then Brock Bowers, he's going to 8, right? He's at the bottom of that tier 3.
Yeah, I'll take Bowers here. I think it's just I've kind of convinced myself at this point I'm probably not going to have too much Bowers because somebody's always going to like him more than I do. And it's now originally there were some size concerns because he's always been kind of a smaller tight end, and then there was some chatter that maybe he was only like 6'2" and like 230 and that kind of thing. And he went to the combine, he was 6'3", 243, I believe it was. So not the end of the world, like pretty good size. Not ideal tight end size, but not bad either.
Yeah.
And so we at least got rid of those concerns. But he's still just a tight end, and I mean, I get, having like a Sam Laporta last year was game breaking, and having a Travis Kelce is obviously game breaking. You can win matchups because you have Travis Kelce in your tight end spot, and someone else is playing Tyler Conklin or whoever. Like you can win because of that, but there's no guarantee that Bowers is going to be used the way that he was used at Georgia by going to a team, and especially if he's drafted by Indy. Like I said, you have Pittman, you have Downs, and then you have Bowers, and I wouldn't put it past Bowers to be the third option there, or at least like the 2A, 2B, whatever. And I'm not falling in love with that player, and it's not to say that he's not good or anything like that, but I'll take him if he's here at 8, but I just don't think he's going to last that long, very often. And so I've just kind of figured out like, hey, I'm not going to have much Bowers, but I'm okay with that.
Do you think that he's almost too good at playing tight end? Like his blocking is obviously really good, really strong. There is a danger of him becoming like a George Kittle where you just can't trust him to put him in your lineup. Like it's very boom bust.
I mean, it's tough. There's players that block and still get used, fine. It's all going to come down to offense and how he's utilized and everything. I don't freak out about that too much. I more so look at, do I believe that a team or a quarterback can get the ball into his hands and do all that? And that's all I'm going to really be concerned about, because especially somebody who's shown the athleticism that he does, it might only take 2-3 plays for him to actually have a decent game, especially for tight end purposes, where, he might only need, like I said, 3 receptions and he has 80 yards. Well, you're already over 10 points at that point. If he scores a touchdown, okay, you got 16 points and you're feeling pretty damn good at that point. So I wouldn't freak out too much about like his blocking ability and all that, because we saw how he was used. He was used in the running game at Georgia. I mean, he was used all over the field. So I feel like hopefully, an NFL team would be smart enough to utilize him to, the best of their ability, and not just be like, oh, well, he's just going to block all the time,
Yeah, he's an absolute weapon. So hopefully whoever drafts him can use his full skill set there. So he's at the bottom of that tier 3. We got 4 more picks left in the first round. Is this a tier of 4 to the end of the first round, or do you have smaller tiers here, or what are you thinking now, John?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously landing spot, draft capital, and all that is going to clear up a lot here, but I would say there's probably a tier 4, maybe 5 players that I would be considering here. I don't have any more quarterbacks that I'm considering for pretty obvious reasons. Although there was plenty of times in the past couple months where people were like, "Oh yeah, throw Michael Penix Jr. at the end of the first, throw Bo Nix." I'm not doing it. Like I don't even want those players. Like, talk to me in the 3rd round, then we can talk about those players. I don't want anything to do with them. But I have 2 running backs that I'm considering here, and then I have 3 receivers that I'm considering as well. And, people have been so out on this running back class for so long,
Yeah.
but I think the combine kind of fixed that to an extent because we saw like high end athleticism from some of these running backs, and that's going to get people right back on them. Now you're seeing a lot of, hey, Trey Benson is my RB1, and then you have people pushing back. No, Jonathan Brooks is still my RB1, even though this and that, we have other people pushing some other players up as well. And then, but I think I would be remiss if I didn't take Rome Odunze here because he's a tier 1 player for a lot of people.
Yeah.
He's not for me. Once again, you're going to kind of figure out, I'm a kind of a Pac-12 hater, so like there's when we're looking at this past season, we have to remember that he played 15 games. Not a lot of other players played 15 games. Most players played 12. Some players played 13, some 14. He played 15 games. So when we're looking at his stats, we kind of have to remember that it looks really impressive. 1,600 and something yards, however many touchdowns he had. It looks extremely impressive. But we have to kind of give us some context. Like, he played more games than everyone else. So of course it's going to look good. Now add in the fact that he played in the Pac-12 and it looked, with not playing against very good defenses at all. And, we have to give it a little more context even then. So I like Rome Odunze. I have no issues with having him on my team. I very clearly draft him here, but I can't push him into that top tier because I don't believe he's the same talent as these other guys. I think he has the ability to get open, do all that kind of stuff, but he's not that. I guess I've said the word game breaking like probably way too many times on this pod, but like that, I mean, it's just, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for somebody to break the game. I'm looking for somebody to be the guy that every person has to focus on, either offensively or defensively. And I don't believe that Odunze is quite that. And so that's why I'm willing to take him here at the closer to the end of the first, but not before some of these other guys that I really do think can be game breakers.
Yeah, especially you mentioned like the Pac-12 and the competition they're facing. Does it worry you even more than that Odunze did take a while to get going in that division as well?
Yes and no. It once again, every player takes a different path, and so I try not to freak out about it too much. It's obviously a part in the model. Like him being a senior is gonna hit a little bit differently than Malik Neighbors being a junior and that kind of thing. But it's just because of looking at years and years of data and saying, hey, the guys that take an extra year are generally a slightly have slightly lesser chance of hitting. So I am going to give him a slightly lesser chance of hitting in the model. That's basically all I'm doing. It's not a huge deal. I don't like, some people are like, oh, this guy's a senior, this guy's a 5th-year player, whatever. Like, he's off my board, and I've never been that way. But they get a slight knock though.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's light knock. Some people have it as a beyond end all, but I'm right there with you, John. I think it's something you definitely have to take into account, but yeah, don't overblow it, that's for sure. So we got Odunze in at 9, 3 picks left. Who's going at pick number 10?
I almost have Brian Thomas Jr. like tied with Odunze, and the only thing is, I will say, he has elite speed, and by elite speed I mean he has his height adjusted speed score. Looking at how tall he is, how much he weighs, and then looking at how fast he is, there's not too many players in the NFL that are that guy. And now, obviously, we know we can look at some of the fastest players in the NFL or the NFL Combine and show how many people have missed and not been quality players. And so I'm not saying that because of that, he's going to be great. But I am saying if he is great, he's going to be that game-breaking great because he has that speed. And, we also have to put in context that he was playing behind Malik Neighbors, like Malik Neighbors that we consider a tier 1 or maybe even a tier 0 player, like get that guy on my team. He was playing behind that guy, and he still served a major role. He still obviously worked in the red zone, scored a bunch of touchdowns. I mean, just an amazing season. Now, the only problem is, of course, go back and look at the 2 seasons before that. He didn't do that much, but unfortunately, him, BTJ, as I like to call him, or Malik Neighbors, neither one of them really did all that much last year, because they were, for whatever reason, they were trying to make Kayshon Boutte the number 1 wide receiver, and it was the weirdest thing. I said from game 1 why the hell is Kayshon Boutte running out as the number one wide receiver? And they had Brian Thomas in a completely different role. They were trying to make him like a possession wide receiver, and that's not his game. That's like a Keon Coleman or a Donai Mitchell, like that kind of person. And he's not that. He's a burner. He's trying to go down the field and get you a 50-yard play. And this year they moved everyone around. Neighbors goes to the 1. Brian Thomas Jr. goes to the 2, but they have him on the outside playing that, that outside role. And next thing we know, he thrives. So was it just that they were using him in the wrong role? And that's why it took so long for him to truly hit and break out and all that. Although, I mean, he's a junior, so it didn't take him that long, but those are the question marks that we have to have. But once again, it's not a perfect prospect profile. Like, it's good. It's very high end in the 3rd year, but there's not much to look at beyond scoring some touchdowns last year. And so that's why I'll have him here at the 110. And like I said, I almost have him tied with Odunze. So, I mean, if there's a better landing spot, once again, I'll move within tiers. I don't move. I try my best not to move outside of tiers, but within tiers, I'll move them up and down and say, okay, this guy's got Patrick Mahomes and this guy's, got Aiden O'Connell. This is not the same. So,
yeah, I do love doing these drafts before we have the NFL draft, and just how, like, players that you would think couldn't move, you're just forced to move them sometimes because of the situation that they end up at. So it could be that, one of these guys ends up with a Josh Allen, a Patrick Mahomes, and you're just thinking, wow, they've got a real opportunity here. I'm being forced to move them up my board, or vice versa. They end up with Aiden O'Connell and the Raiders don't change anything, and you're getting a bit worried about them. So yeah, it's always a really interesting time. So we got Odunze, we got Thomas, we got 2 more picks. Is this where these 2 running backs come into play for you, John?
yeah, I think so. I have another wide receiver that's not that far off of Thomas and Odunze, but I don't want to take him here. And I honestly think he might fall a little bit because he had a rough-ish combine. So I think he might end up being a little bit lower, maybe somebody I want to take in the early second rather than the late first. But I feel like this is the perfect spot to go ahead and take those. Like I said, I have 2 running backs here, so I'm just going to go ahead and take them both. And I think that, there's a little bit of fatigue once again with Jonathan Brooks because he wasn't able to run. He wasn't able to do anything at the combine. He's not going to do anything at a pro day because he unfortunately tore his ACL pretty late in the season. All signs point to him being ready for training camp. I'll believe it when I see it. I don't really care. If we're thinking or considering that we have the 111 here as an actual, I earned the 111. I was in, I was in the mix. I was in the championship game. Once again, we don't draft for need. We draft the best players, and I believe that Jonathan Brooks is the best running back in this draft. And so I'm going to go ahead and take him here. And even if he missed the entire season, then all it means is I'm getting a quality running back at the end of the first who's going to help me next season, in 2 years from now or whatever. And it really doesn't bother me. I think he will get on the field at some point. I think he'll be okay. And he's really a tier of 1 as far as running backs for me. He proved last year that he has what it takes to be that like quality workhorse back that we don't even see too many of in the NFL anymore. And according to what we're seeing from like NFL mock draft database and other websites, he's still being projected to go around the end of the 2nd, beginning of the 3rd round in the NFL draft. And that's high-end draft capital for running backs. It's not Jahmyr Gibbs level. It's not Bijan level, but higher end compared to a lot of other running backs. It seems like the late 3rd, 4th round is where we're seeing most running backs kind of go nowadays. And so when we get that guy that's closer to the 2nd round, we can say, hey, that the NFL teams are prioritizing those players. And so if he gets that kind of draft capital, then I want Brooks on my teams. Now, if he falls, it's completely different. I don't focus on draft capital that much for other positions, but for running backs, I really do care because it just seems to matter more. And so if a team is investing and saying, hey, he's our 60th pick off the board, I'm going to be all about that guy. I'm going to take him here at 111.
Yeah, he's my locked in running back 1 as well. I think he's got the most sort of weapons, the most things that he has available in his game compared to some of these other players. And I mean, if you're out there and you're concerned that he's got an ACL injury, I got bad news for you. So does your favorite running back. Like, every one of these guys has suffered an ACL or will suffer an ACL. Is nowhere near the death sentence that it used to be. Commonly, what we see is it takes these guys maybe like they have sort of a warm up year after trying to get back into it, and then yeah, you're right. After next year, it'll be wheels up for Jonathan Brooks. So I love getting a player like that on, like you mentioned, a championship contending team potentially here. That's going to really take you to the next level and get you younger as well, which is always really good when you can get younger at running back and make your team a bit more give more longevity to your team at the championship level. So we've got one more pick, John, in the first round. Who's that second running back that you were teasing?
Yeah, I think that, most people are going to go with another wide receiver here, but I really want to focus on the running backs because I kind of want to give a little bit of credence to the running backs in this class. I don't think it's nearly as bad of a class as people kind of try to make it out to be. And we saw Trey Benson completely dominate the combine. We see that once again the weight adjusted speed score is off the charts as far as, at least for this class. I mean, it was by far the highest one. The burst score is one of the higher end ones. And those are the two main things that I look at from the combine for these players is, do you have the burst to break through the line? And then do you have the speed to even go beyond that? And he has both. He also has college production. He had up and down college production, but, for the most part, he showed that he can be, he can be the guy at FSU the past couple of years. And then, one thing that I look at is, when they're in college, is big time run rate. How often are you breaking those big plays? And he has a 12% big time run rate over the past couple of years. And that's, extremely high end, just not saying that he's better or anything like that, because one metric does not make a player, but just to put it into some kind of perspective, Bijan Robinson was closer to 8%. And obviously we know that Bijan's game isn't exactly like speed, but it just shows that he has that ability. Trey Benson has that ability to break these huge plays, score you a bunch of points in one play. And who doesn't love that? Like a la like a Breece Hall or somebody like that, where, you get a 50-yard touchdown and bam, your game's like done. You're like, he doesn't even have to touch the ball the rest of the game. And I'm feeling pretty good, and Benson has that kind of ability. Obviously there's going to be some concerns where he was never truly like the guy at FSU. So like he's never been the full workhorse, given 300 touches or anything like that. So there might be some concerns with, he doesn't get that, but I believe with his ability, his speed, his burst and all that he doesn't necessarily have to be a full-on workhorse to score you a bunch of points and still be completely viable for your teams.
I kind of like that as well about Benson, that he wasn't fully given that huge workload. I remember Najee Harris coming out and I was concerned because I was like, this guy has so much tread on the tires already because of how he was used in college. And of course was an older prospect as well. So the fact that Benson hasn't been given that monumental amount that Najee was, and we've seen sort of Najee burn out a little bit quicker than some other running backs potentially. So I quite liked seeing that from Benson. What I really liked as well, whenever Jordan Travis went down, whenever Keon Coleman sort of struggled a little bit towards the back end of the year, Trey Benson was still there, and they still managed to go undefeated, based largely on the fact that Benson was able to, carry the team a little bit by himself, which was great to see.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I've always been high-ish on Benson. And I will admit that the combine did make a difference because I had him projected for not slow, but much slower than the 4.39, I think it was that he ran. And so, and the burst score was all, I don't really project burst score. I just kind of give everyone like 100. And then once they actually do it, then I actually put in their real score. And so those two things came in faster and better than kind of projected or expected. And next thing you know, he moves up the board. And the other thing is there was a couple of running backs that ended up not even coming out in this draft class that I always had ahead of Benson, but they didn't come out. And so, it doesn't matter anymore. So now he's the RB2 in the class. But I really think he's earned it. It's not just that, oh, well, no one else showed up, so here's Benson. Like, I actually think that he earned it, and I'm perfectly fine drafting him here at the end of the round.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. I think these are the kind of players we will see when all said and done. I think it's very unlikely you'll see a full round without the running backs going off the board. And John, what we're going to do now, we're going to try and speed run through round 2 here. So what I'd like you to do Can you give me 3 players in a row? So give me your 2-1, 2-2, and 2-3, and then we'll pick one of those guys to have a bit of a chat about.
Sure. All right. So obviously it's getting more difficult now because, there's a lot of this is going to come down to landing spots, draft capital, and everything else. But I think that Troy Franklin is the guy, the other wide receiver I was talking about, where I would want to have him in the mix in the beginning of the second round. And then I'm going to go ahead and take Marshawn Lloyd and Braylon Allen here. And I think that, they're different styles of running backs, like as far as size and height and weight and all that kind of stuff. But in the grand scheme of things, they're kind of doing what I want them to do, is scoring fantasy points. And so, while they're different styles, it's it's just something I'm looking for here around this range.
Braylon Allen's a real interesting one, right? He's obviously so young that some people were surprised that he declared. Was that a shock to you, or do you think he was always going to do that?
I felt like he was always going to. Obviously, the college realm is a little different now. So it also wouldn't have surprised me if he had stayed. But it always felt like he was coming out.
Yeah, yeah. I can't. He's one. He's slowly been rising up. I don't know. There's something. It's like compared to someone like a Marshawn Lloyd, and it might be fool's gold, but he appears to have that little sprinkle of that little X factor, right? I can't quite put my finger on it, but he seems like he could be a star, and it's not something that will turn up on any of your or Dave's spreadsheets, right? But it's something like intangible. I think Braylon Allen has it. Do you see that in him?
Yeah, and I think we add in the fact that he's the youngest running back in the class, and
Yeah.
that helps that argument even more, because you can say he's not a finished product, where a lot of these guys are. Some of these guys are 23, 24 years old, and not the top end guys, but some of the older ones, or the lower ones, I mean, are a little older, and he's barely going to be 20. I think he's going to be 20.7, I believe it is, and so not even 21 when the season starts. That's what you love to see. He also was not a running back in high school.
Yeah.
And so he hasn't even fully gotten down, like put down the role of RB. And who's to say that he doesn't get better in the NFL, which we don't see very often, but it's possible with him because of the age, because of the lack of experience at the actual position. And then the concerns from a lot of people are the 2023 year just was not nearly as good, but they completely changed their scheme. They brought in a different offensive coordinator, and they had him running out of shotgun, and that's not his game. He's not the make you miss kind of guy. He's the run you over or run past you kind of guy. And that's not the game that they were playing. He still had a decent season. He just didn't take a step forward or do anything like that. So people are looking at the numbers or watching the games and they go, he wasn't nearly as amazing as he was in 2022. Well, yeah, everything changed, So I wouldn't freak out too much about 2023. We're hoping that whatever NFL team drafts him is going to use him the right way. I guess we can't guarantee that, but that's what the hope and that's the desire. So I'm perfectly fine drafting him here in the second. I think that there's at least a handful of these running backs that are really going to matter, and I want to get my hands on them pretty early on in these drafts, because we're seeing more of a split between the top end running backs and the lower running backs in the NFL now, where it used to be you could have 30 something guys and be like, oh yeah, I don't really care who I have, beyond the top 5, just give me a couple guys and I'll be fine for my fantasy teams. Now we're seeing there might only be 9 guys that truly matter, and then a bunch of guys that are like, yeah, well, hopefully he gets me 8 points.
Yeah, you're just kind of holding on a pretend. Like even a guy like Tony Pollard had an absolutely horrendous season next year. He was still right up there, like running back 12, 13, wasn't he? Like, and that was
and it was a bad season, like you said. And if you felt it if you had him on your teams, like there was times where you said, should I be starting him right now? And you felt like you had to. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like there's the haves and the have-nots right now in the running back space, and I want the haves.
Yeah, absolutely. So hopefully one of those guys can be a have, either Lloyd or Allen. So John, let's go through your next 3 players then. So you take an at 2, 4, 5, and 6.
So I'm gonna go with some wide receivers here, and I think that this one's gonna probably shock a lot of people because he has not been mentioned quite a bit. But I'm gonna take Ricky Pearsall here at the top of the tier, and he's been a player that's kind of always stuck out in the model, but has kind of been creeping up, especially because of the combine. And then Keon Coleman and Lad McConkey are going to be the next two players. And I think that we obviously saw the speed from McConkey crush the combine, and people are falling in love with him. There's a lot of people that probably want to push him up into the first round. I'm not willing to do that, but I am willing to take him around here.
Let's dive into Ricky Pearsall a bit more. Not really been mentioned too much on the show so far. I mean, you might know him from Catch of the Year this year, Ricky Pearsall, right? At Florida, unbelievable. Well, him and Keon Coleman both had Catch of the Year contenders, but for me, Pearsall's a little bit better. So, what makes him stand out in your model, John?
I think it's looking at things like I look at PPR points per touch, and it's might seem silly, but one of the reasons why it's in the model is if you can score PPR points, or if you can score points, fantasy points in college, you can do it in the NFL, and it's actually proven. So it's once again, we don't just look at one metric or anything like that, but he has one of the higher end PPR points per touch in this draft class, not the highest, but like high end. And then, market share, he didn't have the best quarterbacks throwing him the ball the entire time. Originally he had Jaden Daniels before Jaden Daniels became Jaden Daniels when he was back at Arizona State. Then he goes over to Florida and he has Anthony Richardson throwing it to him. And Richardson completed 49% of his passes or whatever it was. Like it was not great. And then this year they have Graham Mertz, which is not much better. So the fact that he's basically been the guy for these teams, although it's not like the highest end production, it's good enough. And we're seeing that he has the market share and things like that. But then, he was up to a 31% market share, and that's getting up into that elite-ish range. So while he might not be the most explosive guy or the this or that, although he did have a great combine, and that's why I've kind of moved him up, because he ended up moving up 3 spots for me. And it was probably a combination of him moving up and other people moving down after the combine. But 3 spots is probably one of the biggest moves that a player made from the combine, for me at least. And so, Pearsall jumped a few people, and I'm willing to take him right here. And like you said, there's not too many people talking about Pearsall, but he kind of hits every threshold. And he showed that athleticism. He's over the 2.3 yards per team pass attempt that we like to see. Whereas even Keon Coleman right behind him, I honestly think when it's all said and done that Coleman's going to drop even more. But I'm going with he's still being projected to get first round draft capital right now, and so I'm like, it's tough. I don't think it's going to happen, but I mean that's what he's still being projected, even after it kind of updated from the combine. He's still right there. And I'm like, well, I mean, I'm trying to be as objective as possible. And so I just go off of NFL mock draft database and just what they're saying. Ricky Pearsall jumped up from 90th overall in the draft to 62nd overall. And then Keon Coleman, I felt like 1 spot. So I'm like, okay, well, I guess we're just going to go with this for now. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why that was another big reason why Pearsall jumped up, is because he moved up about 30 spots, so basically a full round in these NFL mock drafts. Now if it actually happens or not, completely different story, but I'm just going off of projected stuff. I let other people do that kind of stuff, because I'm not trying to sit here and predict who's going to get drafted where and when and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely love that. And you're right. If he matches all that criteria, he ticks every box, then in the second round, why not swing the bat at someone like Ricky Pearsall, who's got a chance? So that is us up to 2-7. So who are you going to take for your next 3 picks, John?
You know what? I think I would have said, or before the combine, I think I would have said Jatavian Sanders right around here. And I will admit that I have not actually finalized my tight end model just yet, because there's so much with tight ends, and honestly, a lot of it comes down to landing spot and everything. And I don't truly care about tight ends, beyond a few. So I don't spend a lot of time on them. But Jatavian Sanders would have always been my pick here. But I feel like the consensus is kind of falling out of love with him.
Mm.
And so I think I'm going to go in a different direction here. And I'm going to go with a guy who was originally a top 3 RB in this class for me, but went out and had the slowest combine time at 4.71. I'm going to take Audric Estime here. And I think that people are going to completely write him off their boards because he ran that 4.71. But once again, I have the weight adjusted speed score, but I also have the burst score. He actually has the 3rd highest burst score in this draft,
Mm.
in this draft class. So it's the weirdest thing. He has the ability to get through the line of scrimmage, get you that 5 yards. He doesn't really have the ability to get you 50. And
Yeah.
so we have to make that decision. Of course, we want the guy that can do both. But do we really want to knock somebody who had the best production profile in college in this draft class? Do we want to knock him down that far just because he's not going to get you 50 yards? If he goes out and gets you 10, 20, you're probably still going to be pretty happy, right? And, that's once again going back to the big time run rate. He was almost at a 9% big time run rate. So it's not like some of these guys, much lower guys, are closer to 4%, 5%. We got Frank Gore Jr. is at a 6.5%. Mayan Williams is at a 4.5%. Like those for big time run rate, like that's not what we want. But 8, 9, 10%, that's absolutely what we want. So he's still showing that big playability, even though he doesn't really have the breakaway speed to go get you that huge play. He can still get you the good plays. And so that's why I'm going to go ahead and take him here. And I know you asked me to give 3, and I gave you 1. I like talking too much. I'm sorry.
Yeah, estimate. I think like I wasn't expecting him to come in all guns blazing. Wasn't expecting him to be quite that slow. But I mean, it's going to take an army to bring him down. So he can probably run a 5.5 with someone on his back. So I'm happy. I'm happy with that. So he's probably going to be a goal line guy. He's probably going to be a committee guy. I'm not too concerned about estimate, so I like taking him there and swinging the bat at him. And you had sort of 2 more players to get in at 8 and 9. So who are you thinking?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and I will go ahead and take Jatavian Sanders here. Like I think
Yep.
that even though he has fallen a little bit, I feel like he's going to be right around this range.
Yep.
And then I'm going to take Jalen Wright. I think that he was another one that just flashed that burst, that speed. Second fastest running back in the class. And I want to say the second highest burst score, or at least top 5 at the very least in the class as well. And Wright was always kind of that like mid-tier running back for me production wise, because Tennessee loves to split up their running backs. I mean, they had 4 guys like consistently touching the ball last year. So and they've kind of shown to do that the past few years. And I kind of now that Wright is gone, Jabari Small is gone, I kind of feel the same way this year about my guy Dylan Sampson. Remember the name Dylan Sampson for next year, for next draft class, because I love Sampson, but I don't think he's going to be a workhorse back, because that's just not how they use their running backs, unfortunately. And so Jalen Wright isn't going to have that huge production profile because he only touched the ball like, I want to say like 175 times or 200 times altogether this year, which is not a small sample, but it's not a huge sample either. And so, but I mean, we see he has the receiving profile. He has enough of a BMI, enough size. He has the weight adjusted speed score, the breakaway run rate, like all that stuff is there. PPR points per touch. So it's what I want to see. He can be that kind of dynamic running back for an offense. And once again, where we don't need him to touch the ball 30 times, but if he can touch the ball 15 times, 18 times, whatever, he can still be that game breaker that we want him to be.
Yeah, Jalen Wright's one of my favorite players at this kind of value in the draft. I've seen a lot of places where he's going in the 3rd round, and I sort of tweeted out a few weeks ago, if he's going in the 3rd round in these drafts, he's going to be my most owned player from this draft. Like I'll take him in the 3rd round. I'll snap him up all day long because I think you're right. He's got tons of tools, not a lot of tread in the tires, which we kind of spoke about with Trey Benson as well. So I can't wait to see what he does in the NFL and where he ends up. So love Jalen right there. And you've got 3 more picks to round off the mock draft. Who are you going to go with, John?
Oh, 3 more picks. Okay, so uh I'm gonna take Devontae Walker, Jalen Polk, and let's see, let's get another running back in there. And I'm gonna take Blake Corum to round out the second round there. And I think that, like Devontae Walker was the UNC wide receiver that we were
Yeah.
talking about earlier that, didn't get the NCAA eligibility until halfway through the year, but showed that he was the difference maker once he got there. Now, I was at the Senior Bowl, and I was on the field with Walker, and I will tell you, he has amazing speed, which we saw at the combine. He has the ability to break away from these DBs, but he really flashed that he has some hands issues. And where I said that that drops were a quarterback problem for a lot of players, at least in my opinion, it might be a Devontae Walker problem for this one. Like this was not a Drake May issue, because at the Senior Bowl, Drake May wasn't even there. And I'll tell you what, man, Walker really struggled catching the ball. And I mean, he was letting DBs hold his arm down and do all kinds of stuff. Maybe that gets a flag in the NFL. Maybe it doesn't. But I wanted to see him at some point break free of like all these drops, and he just never did. But he showed the ability to get open at will. And so maybe we'll just chalk it up. I don't want to look at one game, 1 week of practice and say that's who this player is. I want to look at his entire career. Now, he is a 5th-year player. He had kind of a weird thing going through JUCO and everything, so he's definitely not a perfect prospect. But with that speed, we know that NFL teams love speed, so he's probably going to get drafted earlier than he would have been. Elite. Well, originally people were talking about him being in the 1st round. Like that's never going to happen. But like he's still going to get drafted earlier than someone else that doesn't have that speed with the same profile. And so when it's all said and done, I'm hoping that maybe he was just nervous all week or whatever it was, and he can actually catch the ball, because he showed that he can catch the ball at UNC. So that's why I'm take him here, around this range.
Yeah, Tez Walker is a guy that is kind of one. I could just imagine him wherever he goes. That fans are going to be so frustrated by him. Almost, it's like he's so close. Like he's so close. If only he could put everything together. So you're right. If he can clean up some of these things, and we've spoken about, these are young guys. They can still improve. They can get better at different things. And if Tez Walker can round out his game here or there, he could be an absolute steal at the back end of the 2nd round for sure. And John, before I let you go, everyone's favorite topic, sleepers, right? Who are your favorite late round guys that you're willing to take a swing on? Who's no one talking about enough?
I think my favorite sleeper, and honestly, I think he's moving up a little bit. He's still in that sleeper realm, but originally I was saying I would want to draft him in every 5th round. But but I think he might be closer to 4th rounds now, and it's Kamani Vidal. And he's another one that I loved because of being on having C2C leagues. Him scoring me points while he was at Troy was just unbelievable, amazing. I loved every week. But then I went to the Senior Bowl and actually interviewed him, and he was the nicest guy, down to earth, amazing. And he's listed as 5'7". He has like a 2-inch puff of hair on top of his head, so he looks taller because of the puff of hair. But I'll tell you what, that guy is rocked, man. Like he might be 5'7". I'm 6 foot, so like I'm kind of towering over him, but he's huge. He's 215. Like he's a big boy. So you have that. He goes out and puts up I should have it in front of me, but I want to say he ran like a 4.46 40 time. The weight adjusted speed scores through the roof. The burst score is pretty damn good. He is a great receiver. That was one of the things that he showcased at the Senior Bowl. And he's also a workhorse running back, even at that size. Now it was a small school program at Troy, but he was a workhorse back. So while I don't think he's going to be a workhorse in the NFL, if injuries happen, whatever, circumstances happen, he has the ability to be that guy. And so that's the kind of guy that I want to take in the 4th and 5th rounds of my drafts, because it might not happen immediately, but 1 or 2 years down the road, all of a sudden Kamani Vidal is starting for my team and he's scoring me 20 points a game, and I'm like, holy crap, thank God I drafted him in the 5th round.
Yeah, and he's a guy, I'm pretty sure I've got this right. I think he's pretty exceptional pass blocker as well, which really, really helps him just get a chance, get on the field, be that 3rd down back to start with. You're right about his pass catching. So if he can get there, get his foot in the door, we've seen with guys like Caleb Williams and people in the past, sometimes he just need a chance. And if you can get your foot in the door, then sometimes you're not going to give that position back. So I think Vidal's got a chance to do that with his pass catching, with his pass blocking as well. So yeah, I think that's a really exceptionally good sleeper. So John, that brings us to the end of the draft, the end of the show. I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on to the show and chatting through some of these 2024 rookies. Just want to remind everyone listening, where can they find your work online?
Yeah, and I appreciate you having me on, of course. You can find me at the Devi Devotional Podcast, the Full Tilt Devi Podcast. I don't know why I'm saying the like it's the Ohio State football team. I just for like that. Like once again, I'm not used to talking early in the morning on these podcasts. Yeah, this is normally the part where the whiskey's kind of hit, and like I'm just like rambling on, and instead it's just the coffee's hit, and I'm rambling on. So here we are, and you can find some of my articles over at dynastyleaguefootball.com.
Brilliant. Thank you so much once again. And thank you so much, everybody, for listening. If you've not already, leaving that like, leaving that subscribe. If you're listening on the podcast, 5-star review. If you don't think it was 5 stars, you keep that shit to yourself. Don't give it anything else. So thank you so much, John, for coming on. Thanks for listening, everyone. And remember, for anything Dynasty you need to know, keep it locked on the Certified Inferno. We'll see you next time.